In 150 yards, turn right onto Dover Road.
Raising a glass at a Downing Street leaving do during lockdown. The Prime Minister previously told the Commons there had been
Turn
no
right onto
party at
Dover
number 10
Road.
on the date in November 2020. Labour's Deputy Leader Angela Rayner has also questioned why the Met Police decided not to fine Mr Johnson over that gathering.
Well, I think the police have to answer those questions quite clearly on why they didn't think that was breaking the rules, but I know for certain that Boris Johnson knows that he's had dozens of parties now in number 10. It's pretty clear that he was toasting at these events when he said he didn't know that any parties had occurred.
A report by MPs has demanded the resignation of the Foreign Office's top civil servant over the evacuation from Kabul last summer. The Foreign Affairs Committee says Afghan allies and British soldiers were utterly let down by deep failures of leadership in government. The report criticised the decisions of Sir Philip Barton and the then Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab not to return from their holidays. Senior police leaders have published a new plan.
Continue for 1.5 miles.
It's aimed at tackling discrimination, addressing unfairness in the way black people are treated, and raising the number of black officers and staff. 6 historic sites have been granted protected status to celebrate the Platinum Jubilee. They include the Queen's Theatre in Hornchurch in London and a 1930s pavilion in Yorkshire. In the city, the FTSE 100 will reopen at 75.13 after closing up 123 points yesterday, and the pound buys $1.25 and €1.17. LBC weather: rain over eastern England, soon clearing, then a mix of sunny spells and scattered heavy showers across the UK. Drier and brighter in the west this afternoon, a high of 18 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Simon Conway.
The Sky Broadband Super Sale is here. You'll love our Super Fibre Special, back again at its lowest price. Just £25 a month. It comes with super fast speeds, our award-winning service, and amazing value at just £25 a month for 18 months. Now with a £19.95 setup fee. Out of contract? Switch today. Go to sky.com. Superfast 35 ends 16th of June. Usually £30.50, £35.50 a month after 18 months. Prices may change. Average download speeds 36 megabits per second. See sky.com for details.
Thank you.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
Good morning, 3 minutes after 7, Tuesday, May the 24th. Lockdown and out. That's what Labour and some of Boris Johnson's opponents and even some of his Conservative colleagues are saying as these pictures emerge of him at a gathering or party that he visited for, it is reported, around 15 minutes as he said farewell to a senior colleague. We ask him the impact that that has with you. Also, it is official. Operation Pitting, as it was called, the British attempt to evacuate people from Afghanistan, was both a disaster and a betrayal. Fury and tears when they were confronted on that. Here I am going up to then Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab after the fact he'd been away, and this is his rather snippy response.
No, but hindsight is a wonderful thing, which is the luxury of commentators, not politicians, who actually got to do the job, if I may say.
So from fury to tears, the heartache shared by Defence Secretary Ben Wallace when he realised he wasn't going to get out as many people as he wished.
It's a really deep part of regret for me. That some people won't get back. Some people won't get back, and we will have to do our best in third countries to process those people.
The way to tackle race disparity in policing is race lessons, or lessons on black history for all police constables. How will they work? We'll be speaking with the most senior police officer involved in that. And it's on. It's a, a red letter day for the line that I think is coloured purple in London transport maps. I speak of course, the Elizabeth Line.
It's years late and billions of pounds over budget, but today Crossrail finally opens. I'm LBC's Rachel Venables at Abbey Wood. I'll be on one of those new trains soon, racing across to Paddington.
And I'm LBC's Theo Ushwood, catching the bus, catching the boat, catching the tube to find out just how slow it is compared to Crossrail.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
Well, you'd have to be living on another planet not to be aware that there is now fresh pressure on the Prime Minister concerning the culture within Number 10. Claims that he misled Parliament after he has been photographed drinking with aides at a lockdown-breaking party. Number 10 seem to be suggesting it might be some other kind of event in Number 10. These pictures, of course, obtained by ITV News. They show the Prime Minister raising a glass at a leaving do for Lee Kane, his former Director of Communications, in November 2020. Hold on to that date if you can for a moment. Mr Johnson is found in front of a table with several bottles of alcohol, including wine and half a bottle of gin, packets of crisps, and I would imagine his red dispatch box as well. He was not fined for attending this event, despite the police issuing fixed penalty notices to at least one other person who was present at the event.
In 300 yards, keep right to continue towards Tons Lane, A355.
Two people. The Prime Minister told police he viewed the drinks as a work event because those involved were saying farewell to an employee. Allies said, oh, here we go. He attended for less than 10 minutes. I'm sure it was 15 last night. Now it's come down to less than 10. He merely came in to say farewell. Others claim he was actually actively pouring the drinks. Your views in a moment. Now, I asked you to hold on
Keep
to the
right.
date of November 2020, because we go back to last December. Hold on to November 2020. PMQs, Prime Minister's Questions. Labour MP for Hornsey and Wood Green, Catherine West.
Will the Prime Minister tell the House whether there was a party in Downing Street on the 13th of November?
Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, no, but I'm sure that in whatever happened, the guidance was followed and the rules were followed at all times.
Yesterday, the Prime Minister was visiting various places and schools. He was at the St Mary Cray Primary Academy in Orpington prior to the release of those photographs by ITV News. He was asked about the latest developments regarding the Sue Gray inquiry, which you still yet, of course, yet to see. He was also invited to a party as well, but this time by one of the pupils.
In a quarter of a mile, at the roundabout, take the first exit onto the M4 slip road to London Heathrow Airport.
Come on, come to our party, love from... That's so nice of you, thank you.
Lena, have you invited her to a party?
Thank you very much.
To our Jubilee party on Friday, sir.
Wonderful, thank you. I'm, with great respect, not going to comment or give any running commentary on her report until we get it. And I think that, to be frank, the moment is not very far off. It can't be long now before I'll be able to say something.
Well, how many times you said that? Oh, lovely, do come to a party. After the publication, reaction from the government came from Minister for Justice and Tackling Illegal Migration, Tom Purslove, who wouldn't be drawn.
What I'm not going to do is comment on individual pieces or individual photographs in isolation. I think it's right that the Sue Gray report is considered in full and considered in the round. People
In a
will,
quarter
course,
of a mile, merge onto
Based
M4.
on all of that information. This has obviously been a very difficult situation. The Prime Minister was right to apologise profusely and regularly for what occurred. We have, of course, had a due process. It was right that the Metropolitan Police looked at this. They've concluded those investigations.
And yesterday evening, reaction from the Labour Party Deputy Leader, Angela Rayner.
This is clearly not a work meeting. This is clearly a gathering, a social gathering that was clearly against the rules at the time. Now, Boris Johnson knows this, and he knew this all along, and he's just tried to lie to the British public, and it seems like he's laughing at them now. I think it's appalling. People will be disgusted by it.
Continue on M4 for 5 miles.
Rayner, who, of course, we need to remind you, is currently being investigated herself by Durham Police. To George Parker, political editor of the Financial Times, who joins me down. George, where does this leave the Prime Minister this morning? Good morning.
Good morning. Well, I say a much stickier situation than I would have thought 24 hours ago, to be honest. Because I think, like a lot of people, I'd assumed that after last week, when he wasn't fined again, breaches of the rules by the Metropolitan Police, the steam had gone out of the affair. Many MPs were saying, let's move on. Sue Gray's report was going to be a bit of an afterthought. But I have to say that the mood at Westminster has changed quite considerably, I think, since the publication of that picture, which is odd because Downing Street was saying, well, it's just a picture of telling you what you already knew, that there was an event and the Prime Minister was there. But I know it's the power of the picture, isn't it? The bottles of wine on the table, the glasses being raised. It looks like a party, it smells like a party. And I think probably the Prime Minister is going to face a pretty tough week this week.
And the Sue Gray report. George, do we have any indication when we might actually hear and see this?
We don't officially, but certainly the expectation is this week. My guess would be that it'll be published tomorrow, because it's the day when the Prime Minister will be in the House of Commons anyway for question time, and then the normal thing would be that he would then make a statement off the back of Prime Minister's question time where he replies to what Sue Gray had found. So if I was betting on it, I'd say tomorrow. It's most likely to.
Is it fair to say that if you are of the opinion that the Prime Minister is a duplicitous say what he has to escape. Or he's someone who's just been trying to get on with his job, who occasionally walked in to say farewell to a senior colleague. The battle lines are already drawn. Do you think there'll be much movement between those two sides?
Well, you're right that people, this may just reinforce what people already think about the Prime Minister. But, I mean, there are a couple of subplots here as well. The question about whether he misled Parliament or lied to Parliament about what happened on that day. Was there a party? Well, there probably was, in most people's view. And a second subplot, which has emerged this morning on the front page of the Times, is suggesting that a meeting that the Prime Minister instigated with Sue Gray, was obviously with Sue Gray, may have involved the Prime Minister saying to her, look, the Metropolitan Police have looked at this, let's just, we don't want these published a report. And the suggestion in the Times is that the Prime Minister put pressure on Sue Gray to drop her report, which is something his team, the Prime Minister's team, denies, but nevertheless a big allegation to make against the Prime Minister that he was trying to cover this up.
Lastly, difficult one for the Met as well here, George.
Yeah, hugely difficult for the Metropolitan Police. I mean, their handling this is opaque, to put it generously, but baffling, really. I mean, there were fines issued for this event, but the Prime Minister himself, who was at the event, was not fined himself. Why was Rishi Sunak fined for wandering into a birthday party in the cabin? And when people at that party, where the drink was flowing, profusely, we're told only one person, or at least one person at that event was fined, but not everyone. I don't know, it's extremely confusing. I think they've definitely got questions to answer.
George Parker, political editor of the Financial Times. Read all about it. His co-author of the piece in today's paper on this 12 after 7. That's the journalistic background, if you will. To the political, Jonathan Ashworth is a Labour MP and also Shadow Secretary of State for Work and Pensions. You've been around the House of Commons long enough, Mr. Ashworth. What do you see happening over the next 24 to 48 hours? Good morning.
Morning, Nick. Well, I think it's very difficult for Boris Johnson to reconcile what he said at the dispatch box in Parliament, which in days gone by, lying in Parliament was a resigning matter. It's difficult for him to reconcile what he said from the dispatch box with the reality of what we've seen. I mean, it is a party. There's bottles of drink all over the place. He's toasting everybody. We're supposed to be in lockdown. I mean, there was a bottle of sanitizer, so I suppose there is a nod to some of the COVID restrictions which were supposed to be in place. And I think, look, I come at it from this angle. We all know what Boris Johnson is like. Tory MPs know what Boris
In
Johnson
2
is
miles, at junction 4B, exit towards M3, M23.
Paralysed by the preoccupation with Boris Johnson's political survival, when we have this cost of living tsunami. We need measures to protect people now and action to grow the economy and get more people into jobs for the future. Yet the focus of Downing Street and this government is Boris Johnson's political survival and not the financial survival of your listeners, Nick. And I think in the end, Tory MPs have got to show a bit of backbone and do what they know they need to do and get rid of him.
And for clarification, Mr. Ashworth, you say, we all know what he's like. Just spell it out for my listeners. What is he like then? What's the point at which you're driving?
Well, he has fast and loose relationship with the truth. And his interests are his own interests. He's driven by his own personal ambitions, which is why the government is now solely focused on his political survival. The Conservative Party is divided from top to bottom. Some of them will come on your show and speak out openly, but you know as well as I do that plenty of them are saying what they think privately about Boris Johnson. And why this is such the real scandal here for me is that he's been breaking the rules, but at the same time he is doing nothing to help people with this cost of living tsunami. He's not bringing forward the measures that we have called for example, on the windfall tax, or more support for our pensioners who are really struggling at the moment. Instead, the government is divided from top to bottom, focused on this, and the British people deserve better.
Lastly, how is wine and crisps different to beer in Westminster, different to beer and curry in Durham?
Well, you've just got to look at the pictures. I mean, as I say, there's bottles of drink strewed all over the place.
Well, there's bottles of beer in Durham, is that correct?
But he's merrily toasting the assembled crowds. Of course, this is the point where we were supposed to be in
toasting, is it icing? Okay, that's the
no, this is the point where we were supposed to be in full lockdown. I think this is completely different to Keir Starmer's situation in Durham, where you were allowed to have work
In a quarter of a mile, at junction 4B, exit towards M3, M23.
At that point as well. So I do think it's different, because the point is, Boris Johnson at the dispatch box in Parliament said there was no party that day. That's clearly a lie.
Grateful for your time as ever. Thank you, Labour MP and Shadow Secretary of State.
Exit at junction 4B, then keep right at the fork.
On obviously just 2 emails which really do colour it. Mark in Essex, I can't believe people are still talking about this nonsense. Let's just move on to something that matters. Meanwhile, Sean in Surrey, this proves Boris Johnson has lied again and again. If he's an ounce of integrity, he should resign. Despite all the right-wing puppets in the media, including you, this is not going away. Those are the 2 cues, and we'll come to more of that in a moment. Also, the Elizabeth line has opened, and we've got our special Crossrail challenge.
It's years late and billions of pounds over budget, but today Crossrail finally opens. I'm LBC's Rachel Venables and Abby Wood. I'll be on one of those new trains soon, racing across to Paddington.
And I'm LBC's Theo Ushwood, catching the bus, catching the boat, catching the tube to find out just how slow it is compared to Crossrail.
LBC Theo on Friday with all of that race. 7:16 LBC News headlines, Simon Conway.
London's Elizabeth line has finally opened to passengers. The Mayor, Sadiq Khan, says it will transform the city. Labour says there is now no doubt that Boris Johnson lied to MPs after photos emerged of him raising a glass at a Downing Street leaving do. MPs have published a scathing report into the evacuation from Afghanistan as the country fell to the Taliban last year. LBC weather, rain in the east clearing and a mix of sunny spells and scattered heavy showers across the UK, a high of 18 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Joanne. We're very busy on the A13 eastbound at Grays, and that's following an accident. There are restrictions in place. Delays on the A1 both ways to Apex Corner, and that's because of the ongoing works. Also because of roadworks, there are delays on the South Circular Road both ways to Kew. In fact, there are delays all the way back onto the M4 and also over the bridge from the Kew Retail Park. Very busy on the M25 on the Surrey stretch. It's slow clockwise from junction 5 at the M26 to 6 at Godstone, and then anti-clockwise it's very busy from junction 21 at the M1 to 19 at Watford. And the first services on the Elizabeth line are now running, and the line is running to a good service.
LBC.
Behold the Heinz sandwich. Soft, fresh bread, caressed by the tastiest, the creamiest mayo. Yeah. Everything else is just filler. Heinz sandwich may also contain cheese, ham, salad, tuna, crisps, or a million other less important ingredients, and Heinz Seriously Good mayo. Bread sold separately.
Call Nick Ferrari now. 0345 6060 973. This is LBC.
Everyone can make little changes to waste less, and at McDonald's, we're no different.
Like reusing our old cooking oil to make biodiesel.
That helps fuel my truck. Or recycling my used McCafe cup at McDonald's.
To make a birthday card for me. Thanks, Dad.
It's the start of a plan to recycle and reuse even more. Because we know when you change a little, you change a lot. Recycling units available in UK restaurants. Search National Cup Recycling Scheme. Includes cards and other products.
Hold on to your mugs. EE's Full Fiber is here. New broadband that can handle anything. And whatever you think that means, times it by a zillion and dip it in chocolate. Because this broadband connects 100 devices in your home. Search EE Full Fiber.
18.3% UK availability. Check coverage at ee.co.uk.
If you or someone you know owned or leased a diesel vehicle between 2009 and 2020, you could be entitled to significant compensation. At My Diesel Claim, we're experts in handling these claims, and more than 600,000 people have already started their claim with us. Simply visit our site now to check your vehicle's eligibility instantly. It's free to sign up, and you can start your claim in seconds. Visit mydieselclaim.com and join thousands of others starting their claims today.
Wearing glasses can make you look intelligent.
That's right.
But not in William's case.
What? Sorry, what?
William knows pi to 30 decimal places. Yeah, he knows the whole of Hamlet's soliloquy, and he knows how to rebuild a car engine.
It's true.
But he didn't know that stylish, well-made glasses start from £19 at Specsavers. So his expensive glasses that he bought elsewhere just make him look a little bit daft.
Oh dear.
Complete single-vision glasses from £19 at Specsavers. You know you should.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
In 1.5 miles, at junction 3, take the A312 exit to Harrow, Hayes.
Start your day, or for some of you, of course, turn in after your shift. For the front page of the Daily Telegraph, pressure on Met over pictures of PM raising a toast in number 10. The Guardian talks of fresh danger for Johnson over number 10 drinks pictures. That's also very much the theme for the LBC website. PM under pressure from Tories after being accused of lying. The photographs are on most all of the front pages. The Eye, lockdown party photos hit PM. Lockdown in 1 p.m. Oh, I see. Lockdown in down in 1 p.m. I've got it. Well, I suppose I did lockdown and out, so it's fair enough, isn't it? That's the Metro. Partying PM misled Commons is the front page of the Times. The Daily Express, nothing to see here. Yard says Boris broke no rules, so I think probably out on its own they're trying to suggest the conversation has moved on. No chance of the Mirror, Daily Mirror, agreeing with that. How did he get away with this with that picture? Mr. Johnson's picture is on the front page of The Sun, but it's not their lead story. Theirs is some PCs are on the pitch, and this is police looking at CCTV film of a pitch invasion, spotted off-duty officers among the supporters. This is after Bournemouth won earlier in the month, and some off-duty police officers took part in the pitch invasion there. The Daily Mail has nothing, just triple check, no, absolutely nothing concerning Boris Johnson on its front page. It doesn't even have a picture, or that infamous picture. Its picture is of the Queen on her new, well, I think it's new, I don't think I've seen her in it before, what appears to be an adapted golf buggy, which obviously is going to add to her mobility, so we celebrate that. She's at the Chelsea Flower Show, so she had her own Chelsea tractor, I suppose. Their lead story is rail strike could cause blackouts, power blackouts, petrol shortages, and empty shelves loom if rail unions vote to strike. 4 in 5 services could be cancelled if RMT chiefs win support tomorrow for summer walkouts. Transport Secretary Grant Shapps is with us later in the hour on that. And I say again, no room on the front page for Boris Johnson of the Daily Mail. Jason in Southampton. Jason, your reaction? How does this change your view in any way, shape or form of what we pretty much knew was going on anyway? Good morning.
Good morning, Nick. No, it doesn't. We're all getting a little bit bored with this, because I think the normal person in the street sees Keir drinking beer and eating food the same as Boris eating food and drinking beer.
Yep.
But can I also say, Nick, I don't think anyone's picked up on it. If you replay the clip of the lady MP asking Boris Johnson a question at the dispatch box, he doesn't lie. She says to him, will he tell the MPs?
Oh, I know. No, that's dancing on there. I know what you're saying. As in, will you tell me something? No, come on. He's not saying.
No, he is.
No,
I think he is.
No, I know what you're saying is that, will you tell me if a party took place on November the 10th? No.
He says
and
no.
Whatever took place, but then the way he goes on is, and whatever took place, it makes it quite clear that the first half of the sentence, the second half of the sentence refers to the first half of the sentence. Come on, Jason.
I disagree with you, Nick. I think he clearly answers the question, will he tell her at the dispatch box? He says no, and then he goes on to say something else.
Jason, thank you. That's your take on it, and it's time to move on. Bob in Cardiff, do you agree, Bob? Good morning.
Well, good morning, Nick. I didn't quite catch your last call. I'm afraid I came in at the very end, so I'm not sure what he said. I just think that Boris, being Boris, essentially he's a very slippery character, and there's a great element of hypocrisy about this. He's effectively saying, you do as I say and I'll do as I want to do, which is exactly what he did when Partygate was on, because as you said, and people have said quite rightly, there were very strict rules in place at that time about what you could and cannot do, who you can mix with, how many people you can mix with. But these are real, he brought into effect and then blatantly disregarded his own rules.
Can I ask you a question? Notwithstanding the impact of it, how surprised are you to see a photograph of the Prime Minister with a glass of wine inside number 10?
In a quarter of a mile, at junction 3, take the A312 exit to Harrow, Hayes.
Photographs to be taken, but he probably thought, well, I'm Boris Johnson, I can get away with it. You can photograph what you like, say what you like, but I'm going to get away with it anyway, so why should I worry?
Bob,
exit at junction 3.
I'm grateful for your view. We'll have plenty more of them. 7:25. I'm only moving on because there are other stories we must cover, and this is a major one. Police officers
In a quarter of a mile, at Cranford Parkway interchange, take the 4th exit onto the Parkway, A312.
To embrace the label woke. New mandatory training will cover the history of policing black communities and disproportionality in arrests, use of force, and other indicators of disparity, police chief said in a report released yesterday. Now, the most senior officer involved in this is Sir Dave Thompson, who's Chief Constable of the West Midlands Police, Vice Chair of the National Police Chiefs Council, and senior officer responsible for this police race action plan, which we are discussing, and he joins me now. Thank you for coming on, Chief Constable. What has the impact of the Black Lives Matter protest had on policing in the United Kingdom? Good morning.
Good morning. So I think the background to this plan is much wider than that. Obviously, the last 2 years there's been a very acute focus on race issues, but we recognise that this has been a chronic issue for a number of years. You know, we see it in Scarman, we see it in Lawrence. And while policing, I think, has made progress, we're chiefs recognising the current climate, and particularly with the confidence black communities having us, we've not made enough progress. And that's the reason why chiefs have decided that they will set out this plan.
Right. I asked you about that. Should police officers take the knee?
Look, when these issues are dealt with, we are very clear we are here to improve and deliver policing. We're not here to align or affiliate against with a particular movement. It's not what we're about. The issue around that at the time, I think, honestly, the position I took in the West Midlands is people had to judge what was right at the specific moment, and that had to be judged on the basis they're there to do a policing job. But obviously, that expression, it's been used mainstream in football, it's been used in other areas. We left it to officer discretion at the time, but it's not currently a thing that I think is going on in policing.
So it is not to be carried on now?
Well, I'm not setting the rules because it's not a topical issue at the moment.
You are Chief Constable. With respect, sir, you are setting the rules for your own force.
Yeah, but I think on this particular issue...
If one of your blokes or women was to ask you, sir, Gov, what do you want me to do? I'm at a demo. Do I take the knee? What are you going to say?
Exit the roundabout onto the Parkway.
To do a policing role and perform a policing activity, that has to be first and foremost. However, in the environment, in the community context...
Continue on the Parkway for 1 mile.
Taking that first responsibility first and foremost, then you make a judgment before.
So
these are mainstream issues that we see happening in things like footballers doing it. It's more than about lives matter issue.
Respectfully, footballers don't have the power of arrest, but so in some instances, Sir Dave, you would condone your officers taking the knee still?
If it was in keeping with the environment of the event they were at, and they weren't seen to be acting politically, and it was a broader issue, yes.
Which puts you totally at odds with the Home Secretary. Is that a problem?
Well, the issue is I'm responsible for delivery of policing on the ground.
Isn't she involved in policing?
Of course she's responsible for policing. But I have to say, the race action plan, I've come on to talk about the race action plan, which is broader and wider than this one issue.
Yeah, indeed. What will these lessons in black history, I understand it is, and this mandatory training, what will they comprise? What will men and women in the job learn?
So we recognise that our officers are out there doing a challenging job. Now, confronted with a situation where communities practically separate countries, so we want to fully support by understand the context. So we're going through this project at the moment. Many of the officers joining us have never heard of Stephen Lawrence. They weren't alive at the time, they don't understand the background. So we'll be making sure people understand the context, but also some of the training we're doing, for example, in self-defence, is a great purpose of things like de-escalation techniques now, so that when we're confronting issues where people are, where there may be a risk of use of force, we're putting much more emphasis on how we de-escalate.
Are police institutionally racist? You referenced Scarman, you referenced Stephen Lawrence.
Sure.
And of course you'll recall the devastating inquiry into the Stephen Lawrence, the racist murder of Stephen Lawrence. Do you concede the police are still institutionally racist?
What chiefs have said in this report is we're not free of racism, bias or discrimination, but we also accept many people feel that the police service are, and we recognise that. We've not said we are in this report, because I think actually as language it's polarising. I think it wouldn't help take the plan forward, because we need to look about going forward. I think actually our staff are out there are not racist, are doing a strong and positive job, but clearly we're not capturing the confidence of black communities, and that's what we need to focus on.
How will we know if the police race action plan has been a success, Chief Constable?
So I think it's about the confidence in black communities. So what we say in the plan is, and that's why we focus on black communities, the confidence levels in black communities are lower than they are in the general population and in other ethnic minority groups. And that's the overarching area. But we're taking an explain or reform approach to the powers we use. So, for example, there are areas where there are disparities in how we use our powers. They're not all going to be due to policing, but we have to better explain when they are not due to policing. But if they are due to policing, then we need to reform. And each of those areas will set up more detail of what good looks like as we work through the plan over the next few years.
And to some officers who are saying this is in breach of one of Robert Peel's policing principles.
In a quarter of a mile, at Wagoners Roundabout, take the second exit and stay on the Parkway, A312.
You know, so that's the principle that, you know, we have to operate with the approval of the public. And
yes, just important to seek and preserve public favour, not by pandering to public opinion, but by constantly demonstrating absolute impartial service to law in complete independence of policy and without regard to the justice or injustice of the substance of individual laws. That is to say, to those who would say that the Black Lives Matter was a movement of its time, the police are now, could be argued, are now pandering to that, some would say. Chief Constable.
So let's be really clear, the Black Lives Matter issues...
Exit the roundabout onto the Parkway. Continue on A312 for 1.5 miles.
Principles talk about the public, you know, policing by consent, that the police cannot operate with the approval of the public, and the reality is we have lower confidence levels in black communities. We can't do our job enforcing the law, fighting crime, bringing offence to justice if a section of the community, particularly one that suffers in some areas disproportionate levels of crime such as homicide, don't trust the police. So the answer is this isn't pandering to Black Lives Matter at all as an issue. It's responding to the simple fact that confidence in policing is lower in black communities, and to do our core role with the approval of the public, we have to do something about that.
So is this the end of stop and search, Chief Constable?
No, it's not, because the reality is we have powers under law. We need to use those powers. They are important to protect the public. But where there are disparities, we need to explain and account for those. We need to be clear why those disparities exist. And if they can't be accounted for properly by the police, or they're due to something we're doing that's not right, then we have to be very clear what we're going to do about it.
Lastly, in an area such as the Met, London metropolitan area, you will probably be aware, but I'm closer to the figures than you are, that there's roughly a 13% of population in London is black, yet 48% of those who've been detained in connection with knife or street crime are black, and roughly the same number of victims are black. How does the race action plan play into those sensitivities?
So I think there are two issues. The plan is also about tackling crimes where victimisation is higher in black communities. You're more likely to be murdered if you are a young black man. We want to do something about that as policing. That's really important. Equally, what we've got to make sure, search is clearly going to be a part of tackling knife crime, but we've got to make sure that's used intelligently, wisely, and focused in the right areas, so that we can explain when we're using it. Because actually, too much search can, if not used wisely, can damage community confidence. So those powers are important, but we absolutely have a role to account for those issues, just as much as we have to reduce the level of victimisation in black communities.
One final question. The new Chief Inspector, Andy Cook, on a different matter, Chief Constable, Andy Cook has spoken about police possibly turning a blind eye to smaller crimes, such as what's known as shoplifting, due to the cost of living crisis. Is that something you endorse in the West Mids?
No, my view is if people commit criminal offences, it should be dealt with through that. It's for the courts to decide when they deal with these matters whether there are factors that need to be counted and taken into account in the circumstance of the offender. So there is no policy change in respect.
Thank you for your time, Sir Dave Thompson, Chief Constable of West Midlands Police, Vice Chair of the National Police Chief Council, and Senior Officer responsible for the Police Race Action Plan. 7:34, breakfast with me, Nick Ferrari, here on LBC. Straight to the news, Simon Conway.
The first Elizabeth Line trains are now running through London. The project is 3.5 years late and £4 billion over budget, but promises to increase capacity and speed up journey times. Boris Johnson is facing fresh accusations he lied to Parliament over Downing Street parties. Photos have emerged of him raising a glass at a leaving do in November 2020. The Prime Minister previously told the Commons there were no parties on that date. A new plan to tackle racism in the police has been published by senior police leaders. It's aimed at tackling discrimination, improving confidence levels among black communities, and raising the number of black officers and staff. LBC weather, rain over eastern England.
In a quarter of a mile, turn right onto Roslin Avenue.
Heavy showers across the UK, dry and brighter in the west this afternoon, a high of 18.